Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a world where, right after World War II, America finds itself at this huge crossroads.
Right.
What if, instead of going for global dominance, it made a totally different choice, like almost revolutionary,
Yeah.
turning inward, focusing all that power on healing, on building a society based on, collective care.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big what if we're diving into today,
Yep.
exploring this alternate history that, well, it raises some really compelling questions about our own world.
Precisely. And our source material from Dr. Jaime Hoerricks, it really throws us into this other America. The author talks about a timeline where the U.S. chose care over conquest.
Care over conquest.
Yeah, a real departure from, well, our world's path towards empire. Dr. Hoerricks apparently accesses these memories of another timeline through some kind of unique device, sees it as a witnessed reality, not just a dream.
Wow. Okay.
So our mission here in this deep dive is to really get a handle on what this other world looks like, what choices did they make, how did it diverge, and what does it tell us about our own history, what might have been possible.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 1945. The war is over.
Right.
Unlike Europe or Asia, America's cities are untouched. Factories are roaring. Its wealth, its influence, unmatched. I mean, something like 1 out of every 3 manufactured goods globally made in the USA.
Incredible dominance.
Yeah. Soldiers are coming home not to rubble, but to, ribbon cuttings. So the question wasn't if America would lead. That seemed obvious. It was how. What kind of world were they going to choose to build? That was the moment, wasn't it?
And that's exactly the pivot point, the great divergence. Instead of pushing all that immense force outward for global power, in this other timeline, they chose to redirect it, turn the power of war inward, towards healing the nation, towards reconstruction.
So the opposite of our world's choice for empire, for militarization.
Completely. A single decision, really, but with these massive cascading effects.
And that led to what they called the Grand Reconstruction. It's kind of amazing to picture it. Factories that made tanks and bombs. They were transfigured, not shut down, but retooled.
Yeah.
Making trains, tools, materials for, well, a peaceful society.
Right. Productive capacity redirected.
And the returning soldiers. They weren't just demobilized or facing unemployment. They were seen as builders, like the workforce for this new future.
And what's really striking is how fast these structural changes happened and the intent behind them. Entire industries nationalized.
Nationalized. Just like that.
Apparently with little fanfare, as the source says. Housing declared a human right, not a commodity.
For the human right. Okay.
Land redistributed through cooperative trust, so community ownership, basically. Protecting it from speculation, keeping it accessible.
That's huge.
They redrew railroad maps, reoriented medical schools towards community health, not just individual profit. The whole idea of a public good. It wasn't cynical, it was the driving principle.
So federal contracts didn't just go to, say, Boeing or Lockheed.
No. In their world, that money went to public housing, cooperative farms, cities built around rail, walkable cities. Even the War Department changed.
What did it become?
The Department of Reconstruction and Transition. And get this motto, that all may dwell in safety and share in plenty.
Wow. That's a fundamental rewiring of national priorities.
From the ground up.
Okay, so the GI Bill. In our world, huge for education. What happened there?
It was rewritten, massively expanded. Not just tuition, but land grants. Actual land. Housing co-ownership schemes. Seed money for worker-owned businesses.
Worker-owned businesses. Imagine the shift in wealth and opportunity that creates right from the start.
Exactly. And these cooperative cities they built, designed by this incredible mix of people, Bauhaus emigres, feminist urbanists, disability activists, former sharecroppers.
So diverse perspectives baked in from the start.
They weren't segregated. They had walkable grids, garden corridors, community and accessibility were just built in. Real commitment to inclusivity. And this commitment, it literally reshaped the country. Land reform wasn't just talked about, it happened. In Appalachia, the Deep South.
Places with deep historical injustices.
Right? Former plantations. They became democratically run agrarian co-ops.
That's transformative.
And public electrification, which faced, opposition here, it took off, again, federal and local support. Entire towns became energy and food self-sufficient by the early 50s.
So liberating communities, decentralizing power, literally and figuratively. And the really mind-blowing result of all this.
What's that?
The Cold War. It just never happened.
It never came. Yeah.
Why? How? Was it just goodwill?
It wasn't a lack of tension, apparently, but the U.S. in that timeline, it refused to, quote, sanctify its fear. Truman chose diplomacy, acknowledging the huge Soviet sacrifice at Stalingrad.
Okay, diplomacy over dominance.
But here's the really critical bit, according to the source. At Nuremberg, figures like John Foster Dulles, Alan Dulles, Wild Bill Donovan.
Names very familiar in our history.
Yeah.
Architects of Cold War policy.
In our history, yes. Statesmen. In their history. They were tried.
Tried. For what?
For, and I'm quoting, the willful creation of the conditions that started the war, the prolonging of war for private gain, and crimes against world peace. Essentially, the Dulles framework, that aggressive anti-communist policy engine, it was dismantled before it began.
So without their influence, no CIA as we know it, no rollback doctrine, no coup in Iran.
None of it. The phrase Iron Curtain didn't even stick. That whole era, they called it the Cold Collaboration.
Cold collaboration. Sounds almost paradoxical.
Well, it was cautious, but it was cooperation. Former allies working together, demilitarize, decarbonize, deconcentrate power, actively choosing collaboration over confrontation.
It really sounds like a world choosing differently.
Absolutely. And the source stresses it wasn't some utopia. It was hard work, a sustained effort, redirecting national grief, recognizing shared humanity.
So where we built military bases,
It planted orchards, where we claimed territory.
we laid railroad tracks.
Exactly. Devolving power where we centralized it. They built a nation that didn't need war to feel strong. It was rooted in, well, structural justice.
So if that's the foundation, what was it like growing up in that world? The next generation?
Well, their baby boom was different, not focused on consumption, buying stuff. It was, as the source says, a generation born into a project of collective repair. They saw themselves as stewards from the start.
Stewards. Okay. How did that play out? Like in healthcare?
Healthcare is a fascinating example. By the mid-50s, that wartime medical corps, it became a huge decentralized national health service.
Decentralized.
Yeah, run through regional councils, community clinics. It wasn't top-down bureaucracy. It was described as a covenant. Health wasn't seen as a personal failing or something to buy and sell.
So no GoFundMes for medical bills.
Exactly. Care was just guaranteed.
Ah.
By 1965, their life expectancy was better than Scandinavia's, not just longer, but lived with more dignity. Maternal deaths basically vanished. Mental health care as normal as going to the dentist.
That's a different world. And cities. You mentioned cooperative cities earlier.
Yeah, urban policy followed the same path. Instead of things like redlining, they used community land trusts. The land owned collectively, permanently, kept housing affordable, gave communities control, prevented speculation.
So stability, not just profit.
Right, and public housing wasn't stigmatized. It was designed to be beautiful, local, intentionally intergenerational. Built for dignity, for ecology, rootedness was the goal.
And what about the civil rights movement? Obviously, the injustices were still there.
It still happened, absolutely. The injustices ran deep, but it played out differently. It wasn't criminalized in the same way. It wasn't co-opted or neutralized by, assassinations and heavy surveillance.
How so?
Black cooperatives, unions, freedom schools, they weren't just allowed, they were funded. Reparations weren't just debated, they were actually structured. Land return programs, direct cash payments, community economic trusts, led locally, but with federal backing.
Wow. Actually doing it.
And the memory of slavery, Jim Crow, it wasn't swept under the rug. It was literally carved to public monuments of grief, study, and repair, facing the history directly.
That's a profound difference.
Oh.
And this collaborative, non-imperial approach, did it affect things like, say, the space race?
Massively. Their moonshot wasn't a Cold War competition. It was a shared human project. Scientists, engineers from the U.S., the USSR, India, Brazil, Ghana, Japan, all working together.
Seriously. Coordinated internationally.
Yeah. The first photos of Earth from orbit, the caption was just, "No borders from here."
No borders from here.
Their Apollo wasn't a show of force, a flex, as the source puts it. It was a fellowship, a completely different framing of humanity reaching for the stars.
Which leads to maybe the biggest divergence. Vietnam.
Never happened.
Just didn't know.
Without that Dulles framework, without the CIA operating that way, without the corporate drive for resources, there was no justification. The whole domino theory logic didn't exist.
So all that money, hundreds of billions,
redirected into a global anti-colonial alliance, led by the formerly colonized nations themselves.
led by them.
Yeah, but backed materially by the U.S. and USSR together, providing reparative infrastructure roads, schools, hospitals to Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America, on their terms. Solidarity at scale.
That's almost unbelievable compared to our history.
It's a radical shift. And even on a more personal level, things like queerness. It found more space. In 1974, a federally recognized first gay commune became a model.
A federally recognized
Yeah,
law.
for alternative ways of living, kinship, co-parenting. The whole idea, the grammar of chosen family, was taught openly in universities. Less fear, more acceptance built into the system.
So looking back at that whole era, the 50s to the 70s.
The author really emphasizes they didn't have some special genius or more resources than we did or perfect leaders. It was just
Different choices.
different scaffolding, different assumptions, a different answer to the question, what is a nation for? Their boomers grew up learning that care wasn't just, being nice. It was a structure, not a gamble, not a debt you owe someone.
Built into the fabric of society.
Yeah. Their struggles were human struggles, dealing with floods, improving schools, building community, not imperial ones. And looking up, their sky promised no borders. It whispered, this is all ours, together.
Okay, let's pause here for a moment, because the source author, Dr. Hoerricks, shares a really personal reflection when searching for themselves in this other world. It kind of brings this huge concept down to a very human level.
It's incredibly moving, actually. Dr. Hoerricks searched through the records accessed by this device, and discovered they were never born in that timeline.
Never born. Why not?
Because the specific conditions that forced their parents' families to migrate to the United States in our world, they didn't happen there. The debt crises, the land seizures driven by corporations, the dismantling of local economies, the wars, the pollution, the hunger disguised as development.
All the pressures that drive migration.
They just weren't there, or not in the same way. So their families never had to leave their homelands. They never met. And so the author wasn't born.
How do they react to that? I mean, discovering your own non-existence in another reality.
Not with bitterness, apparently, which is maybe what you'd expect, but with what the author calls a reverent grief.
Reverent grief.
Yeah. Reflecting on a world where survival didn't force people to leave home, where families weren't scattered by global capital, where you didn't have to fight your way into a country only to be told you weren't welcome.
So being absent in that world felt like feeling its mercy.
That's how the author puts it. Strangely, like feeling its mercy. It's a really profound thought. A world kinder even in its absence of you.
Okay, so moving forward in this alternate timeline, the 1980s arrive. In our world, that meant austerity, Reaganomics, a certain kind of cultural shift. What about there?
Well, their 1980s arrived, as the source puts it, not with austerity, but with architecture, meaning the structures of social abundance built over the previous decades were mature. Cooperatively designed, regionally maintained systems were the norm.
So the foundation was completely different, and Reagan
never rose to power. There was no stage for him, no cultural backlash for him to weaponize in the same way, no moral majority mobilization like we saw, no Southern strategy.
Why no Southern strategy?
Because the South, in their timeline, had been offered something tangible back in the Reconstruction era: land, resources, real autonomy. The grievances were addressed differently, and there was no big neoliberal pivot because the economy wasn't controlled by speculators to begin with.
So their 80s weren't about deregulation and individualism.
No, they remember it as the golden age of post-scarcity design. Thinking about how to use abundance well, not manufacturing scarcity. It just shows how different political outcomes can be when the underlying economic and social assumptions are different.
And what about big challenges like climate change? Did they just ignore it?
No, they started tackling it much earlier. By 1990, it was serious planning, not panic mode. Nuclear energy, but reimagined with public safety first, provided baseline power.
Complemented by
Solar cooperatives, regional water trusts, ecological councils working together, building a power grid that was resilient, redundant, and relational, tied to local ecosystems.
and the fossil fuel companies, the big players in our climate story.
They had been nationalized decades earlier.
Nationalized, okay.
Their profits had already been redirected towards climate repair, job guarantees for former fossil fuel workers transitioning to new roles. So the planet wasn't, magically healed. They still had challenges, but it was not hurt so deeply. Corporate profit wasn't the main obstacle to action.
That structural difference, it seems to touch everything. What about something like libraries?
Libraries evolved slowly, steadily. They became what the source calls commons halls.
Commons halls, like community centers.
Way more than that. True knowledge hubs, offering childcare, elder care, after-school programs, mutual aid kitchens where people shared food and skills, fabrication labs with tools and tech, cultural archives.
All in one place.
Yeah, you could learn to code, learn to cook, apply for housing, take a poetry class, get help with elder care, all under one roof. Real community infrastructure.
That sounds incredible. And what about the economy? Did they have booms and busts, like the 2008 crash?
Nope. 2008 financial crash never happened.
Why not?
No, too big to fail banks.
Right.
Finance was mostly cooperative, local, accountable, Wall Street. It had been turned into a museum.
A museum.
About what? About speculative bubbles, seriously. What we call the economy, that huge, complex, often scary thing. For them, it was much simpler. It was just how people shared what they needed to live.
How people shared what they needed to live. That's a radical reframing.
It really is. Takes the abstraction out of it.
Okay, so that level of stability, that infrastructure,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder how they handled a truly global shock, like COVID-19.
Well, their response was dramatically different because that abundant care infrastructure was already woven into society. They had had pandemic response councils since the early 90s. Public health wasn't an afterthought. It was integrated.
So when the pandemic hit,
Everyone had paid leave. Food delivery was immediate, free for those isolating or vulnerable. Childcare was reallocated. Housing was stabilized, no mass evictions. And importantly, care workers were given actual leadership roles in national strategy.
decisions made how?
Democratically, through citizen assemblies, but specifically guided by the wisdom of disabled and immunocompromised elders, their experience was centered.
Fundamentally different.
They still mourned their dead deeply, remembered every name, but the source notes, no one died alone. Their world faced the 21st century feeling resilient, interdependent, abundant, guided by that ethic of stewardship, not growth or dominance, but repair. The world as something to tend, not own.
Let's make that concrete. Give us an example from their 2024.
Okay, picture this teacher. In Los Angeles, she's walking home along the LA Green Line, not a freeway, a green infrastructure corridor. She lives in a 6-unit housing cooperative built above one of those commons halls we talked about. Her walk takes her past community fig trees, a free pharmacy, a little cafe that doesn't even need to ask for names because it's truly local.
Sounds peaceful, grounded.
And her personal reality reflects this. Her pronouns, she, her, just accepted, no fuss. Her classroom, sensory-friendly, joyful. They're learning about ecosystems, mutual aid in nature, fungal networks connecting things. She recently took paid leave for complications after top surgery. Her job, her dignity completely secure, never threatened.
So she's just living her life.
Exactly. She's not debated on morning news, as the source says. No one asks her to prove her worth. And the author concludes this vignette with a really powerful observation. She is not afraid.
Yeah.
And watching her, I realize that is the difference.
The absence of fear. Born from that structural care.
Yeah.
It really hammers home that core message from the source, doesn't it? It's almost jarringly simple. It was not impossible. We simply chose against it. Not in one big moment, maybe, but slowly, relentlessly. One military budget at a time. Seeing our war economy as this great siphon, just diverting endless resources away from care. It seems so obvious laid out like that. Basic math, almost.
And the numbers, the actual arithmetic, they make it even starker. The source provides estimates. Between 1946 and 2024, the U.S. spent somewhere between $35 and $45 trillion on war and preparing for war.
35 to 45 trillion. Okay.
Yeah. Now compare that. A fully public national health service, like the one in their timeline, estimated costs over the same period, maybe 10 to 12 trillion.
Okay.
Free public college, free trade school for everyone, less than 3 trillion.
Less than 3. Wow.
A modern national rail transit system, maybe 4 to 5 trillion. And then you lump together community-owned housing, land trusts, public energy, paid family leave, fully funded libraries and commons halls, maybe another 6 to 10 trillion combined.
So wait, add all that up. The healthcare, education, transit, housing, energy, leave, libraries, everything from that other world.
You do. And the total cost is significantly less than what was spent on the military and empire.
So the source concludes, all of it, every system of care and freedom and interdependence imagined in that other world could have been ours for less than what we spent on empire, with trillions to spare.
Trillions left over, it puts it bluntly. This isn't fantasy, it's arithmetic. The numbers were never the problem.
The resources were there.
The resources were always there. The question was always simply, what kind of world were we trying to buy?
This whole deep dive, looking into this parallel America, it really shows something profound, I think. Our world, the way it is now, it wasn't inevitable, was it?
Not at all.
It was built, constructed, based on choices. Incremental choices, maybe, but relentless ones. This story, this alternate path, is kind of testament to possibility. A demonstration of what could have been, and maybe what could still be. right? If different choices are made.
Indeed. Because that ultimate question the source keeps returning to, what kind of world will we choose to build? It wasn't just relevant in 1945.
It's relevant now.
It's always relevant. It pushes us, pushes you listening to reflect on our own choices, society's choices, and to really consider the potential for a different future. Because the capacity, the resources, they were there. The only thing missing, perhaps, was the collective decision.